Whether you already identify as a creative person or if you're trying to bring more creativity into your life, you're going to love this interview with Fain House Radio's Annie Fain and myself. We talk all about the creative lifestyle, how to bring more creativity into your life, and how we are all fundamentally creative, whether we believe it or not. It was such a pleasure to participate in this interview, and I know you're going to love it too.
Tell us your name and what have been the main creative endeavors of your life.
My name is Kate King, and I have just been a creative person for as long as I can remember. Um, I love color. I love, the creativity of mixing different herbs into teas. I love music and dance and movement and writing. So expression has been a really integral part of kind of who I am.
And I mean, it's clear you've always had a sense of it. Like you're saying, you can't remember a time without having these feelings. Within your family, did you feel like there was parts of you that it was clear from the beginning you were already on the path that you are on now? Were there hints of it?
Yeah, I think so along the way. My dad is a stone sculptor. And so I definitely had that influence. And my grandmother just loved color and florals and art. So we would take painting classes together when I was really young. And I used to have these black bound sketchbooks that I carried with me everywhere. Like they were an appendage and kind of like the smartphone is now for kids. And I would draw everywhere I went. And so I feel like I did have kind of the little seeds for creativity that went through my childhood. And then as I grew and progressed and developed, they sort of, got more honed in and more clarified and distilled and got me to where I am now.
That's so special, the story of taking painting classes with your grandmother.
Mhm. Yeah,
That's
very
cool.
special. Mhm.
Did you have any siblings in the mix?
Yes, I have a younger sister. She's 3 years younger than me, also creative. She's actually an architect right now, so she has her own creative career. And my mom came to art making later in her life, and she now has a daily art practice. So everyone in my family has found their way to creativity in one way or another.
Right. So you generally feel pretty understood, you would say?
Generally, yeah. I think with the room for creative expression to be unique and sometimes kind of a mystery to anyone but the creator. But yes, I've always felt like creativity was a really safe place where I could kind of be held.
Yeah, I think sometimes people struggle with having to defend it or having to explain why and maybe haven't found their group yet that understands. And so it's nice if it comes starts out in a family setting and and also for everybody out there that doesn't have that, you can still make it yourself. You
Yeah.
just find your new group.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I feel like you can weave creativity into any endeavor, really, because it just allows open mindedness, free flowing thinking and imagination, and curiosity, the willingness to try and anything. I mean, even organizing your closet can be creative if you have that mentality.
Definitely. One thing that I'm really interested in redo. One thing I'm really interested in about you and the work you do is, there's that whole thing of like the poor artist or there's no career in art or, not that's not true. It's just these little voices. It's like built into culture a little bit. And of course, we find our own ways to deal with those worries. But what's very clear, which is connected to what you were just saying, is that creativity is, I mean, kind of folded into everything, but also you've taken it another step further in terms of the work you do. So I'm painting and selling prints and art prints and teaching a lot and then do the music and the dance and stuff. And so you've taken the art even a different direction in a real career sense. How would you describe that process for you and explain all the little letters that come after your name?
Okay. So my credentials are MA, which is master's degree. I have a master's degree in transpersonal counseling psychology and art therapy. And Then LPC stands for Licensed Professional Counselor. That's my counseling licensing in the state of Colorado. And ATR-BC stands for Board Certified Registered Art Therapist. So that's my credential to practice art therapy in a clinical sense in my private practice. And I came across this is actually kind of a funny story. So I was coming to the end of college and I had a bachelor's of art and psychology double major. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't know what to do with these. And so this was kind of when the internet, we were all just really excited about Google because it wasn't as, familiar as it is today. But I went into Google and I was like, what do you do with an art and psychology major? And Google brought me to art therapy. It just popped up like, have you heard of art therapy? And this program in Boulder, which ended up being the master's program that I went to at Naropa University. And so that's how I first found out about art therapy. And then I went for a 3-year master's degree to be qualified to practice as an art therapist. And my specific master's degree integrated a lot of spirituality. That's the transpersonal counseling piece, where kind of psyche meets spirit meets art, which for me was just a really holistic perspective on how to use art for healing and growth and insight and overall wellness. So that's kind of how I came into it. And then I worked at various art therapy settings, including a juvenile diversion program, an inpatient facility for young adolescents, a grief house, an eating disorder treatment center, all just building my experience with art therapy. And then I opened my private practice, which I've been working in for about 15 years. And I've been seeing clients for both art therapy as well as different kind of methodologies of traditional counseling as well.
Well, I'm glad you explained all those letters because we need it to be explained. We'll get into more that just made me think of so many questions, and we'll get into more detail. But as you were talking, I was thinking about how interesting this is, the mix of art or creative life that could be from your gut, from an intuitive, base and feel, like, should it be this color or this color? How's the design feel and that kind of thing. And then you have this whole science element to it that is rigorous, even including your hands-on experience as you were training yourself or being trained and learning all that you were learning. How do you think about that combo of the fuzzy, the intuitive, the flowy with a more like a clear scientific system?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So in art therapy, there are two kind of dominant branches. There's art as therapy, which is basically the belief that creating art all by itself without any therapeutic intervention is therapeutic. So me with my sketchbooks as a little girl, I was having a creative outlet. I was moving energy through me. I was working things out unconsciously, and nobody was analyzing it, and it was still healing. And then there's the branch of art as psychotherapy, which includes more analysis, processing, and different modalities that kind of go into the depth of the psychological piece in conjunction with the art making. And so that is more of what I practice in my therapy practice, so that the art and the psychology can come together from a clinical perspective, but also having that warmth and accessibility of creativity. And it is incredible the way that creating art just allows people sort of a backdoor into their unconscious so that they can work with parts of themselves that they may not have access to if we were just talking. And through line and shape and color and texture, they're able to see metaphors that maybe they wouldn't have drawn before, like, oh my gosh, all of my lines are sharp and jagged. What does that mean for me? What do I associate with sharp, jagged lines? And then from there, we start to go down the rabbit hole of who you are, where you've been, what are you carrying, and what are you ready to heal?
Yeah, awesome. Part of what you're offering out into the world is what you call the Radiant Life Project.
Yes.
So how did that come about, and explain what you describe as the 3 pillars of a radiant life?
Yes. Oh, I'm so lit up by this work right now. So during the pandemic, I was on the front lines of the mental health world with all the other healthcare providers. And it was a wild time to be a healthcare provider. It still is. And at the beginning of 2022, I came face to face with the deepest burnout I have ever felt professionally. And so I took a 4-month hiatus from my practice in what I called a sabbatical. And during my sabbatical, I did some real soul searching about, like, okay, it's been 15 years of this kind of work. How did I get to burnout? What what's the way that I can offer my gifts to the world and fill myself up and still, feel that sense of abundance and that flow? And so from that introspective time, the Radiant Life Project was born as sort of the new rebrand of what used to be a therapy business. Now, the Radiant Life Project is an expansive self-help platform that has therapy as one component, but it's not the only thing I offer. There's also a book, The Radiant Life Project, that is almost done being written and on its way to publishing soon. I offer speaking, I offer retreats and workshops. And so it's just a different kind of lens for offering the art therapy, the creative methods, as well as my psychological background to support different kinds of audiences, both very large and also on the individual scale as well.
It's clear that you're so excited about it. It's just on your face. It sounds too like the difference between, like you're saying, I don't know if it's a cocoon necessarily, but having your office and having this kind of, a centralized, like little small space that's sweet with whoever you're working with. And what you're describing is kind of going out more, like speaking and not saying too much. And that's really different way of presenting yourself. How do you feel about that?
I feel really excited about it. I've always had a sense that this work that I offer one-on-one for all of these years has been so powerful and transformative for people that I've kind of had this sense that I want to allow more people to access that, but I hadn't been able to figure out how. And so it feels important to be able to create a mechanism in my system of my business that expands to the masses through the speaking or through workshops being online and potentially national and international, or retreats in different places that bring together people who may have come from different cultures or backgrounds. So it's really inclusive in that sense, but it also maintains the sense of intimacy that is so necessary for the kind of trust that needs to happen with this work. So this is sort of my balancing act of the internal and the external, and creating a bridge that allows both to feel nourished and sustainable in a helpful way for people.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying also, because you needed those 15 years to do this.
Right.
So like so much you learned in that time. Now you're ready to hit the road, as they say.
Yes, absolutely. And it's such an integration too, because that 15 years of clinical experience brings me all the clinical trainings, all the scientific backing for the psychological modalities I work with. But I also have this creativity as a basic framework and foundation that sort of holds it all. And then within that, there's spirituality, there's different kind of schools of psychology that I've become really well trained in. And then there's the knowledge of my own personal journey and the stories that I can use to illustrate how I walk this talk and I do this work too. And so I don't expect anyone else to do anything that I haven't already done or wouldn't do. And so we're in this together. And that's why I call it a project, the Radiant Life Project, because we're all works in progress. And I'm right there with you. And the best project any of us can ever engage is the project of our own personal growth and development.
Yeah. It's like we're our own grand experiment.
Yes, constantly evolving and continually growing and manifesting.
Yeah. And part of what you're describing too, you think of mixed media in terms of materials you would use on a page or on a canvas. You're describing almost mixed media. What you're offering, the way I'm seeing it, is like mixed media in a different way,
Yeah.
Because you have all like the modalities you're talking about the art side of it and other backgrounds you have and clinical and speaking. And also this is a little fun side note too. You have created, and I think you have it with you, your your deck,
Yes. Yes.
which
My
I think is
oracle
it's a
cards.
great example of this mixed media side of things from a business point of view, an art point of view, and the Radiant Life Project. Tell us about it.
Yes. So this is what I call the Ink and Wings Oracle. And it is a deck that is comprised of images that I made. And each image holds a great deal of, here's just one as an example. They all hold different kind of energetics within them that can be used for reflection and introspection. And I have, when people buy the deck, you can buy it on my website. I offer a little book that kind of helps to give someone a sense of what these are about and what they might mean, and a little bit of direction on how to pull cards if someone's not familiar. And in that way, they can bring kind of the magic of this into their own home, into their own practice, and it can kind of be another support in their resource box for them.
And is the idea that like each morning you pull a card?
Can be, yeah. Or like I like to just keep mine on my desk. And if I notice that I'm ever in one of the introspective mind spaces of like, what is going on with me here? What should I do today? Or I'm puzzling over something. I'll just open the deck, and I usually start by kind of just setting an intention and maybe asking a question. And then I'll pull a card, maybe more, or sometimes I'll pull past, present, future, and I'll kind of see where I've been, where I am, and where I'm headed. And I always get so much wisdom from this deck. It's amazing. And these images were not originally created for this deck. These were just images that I've made. And then when I decided to pull them all together into a deck, they took on totally expansive dimensional meaning. And it's really interesting. And my kids play with the deck. I give it to my friends as gifts. So it's really applicable for all people.
I think it's really fun too because you made the deck and you're using the deck for yourself also. So it's almost like you are guiding yourself, or you're asking yourself for advice, or or like you're saying, to set the intention. That's a way that somebody else could do it with the same deck. It's like getting in touch with yourself. We know a lot of our own answers already.
Yeah.
And so how to use that to help you know your own answer almost. Do you
Yes.
feel like that?
Yes, and we're so projective, right? Meaning that we project parts of ourselves onto everything in our world. So if there's something that you see in your world that you like, it's because it's reflecting something about you that feels good. Or if you respond to a person or an experience like, I don't like that, well, that's really just reflecting something about you that you don't like or you don't have tolerance for, right? So in that way, the cards act the same way, where you just project the meaning onto whatever the imagery is, kind of like a Rorschach ink blot, right? And you get to make your own meaning in congruence with whatever the imagery holds already.
That's so fun. A really fun example of combining medias and combining worlds.
Yes, for sure.
Do you do readings for people in your sessions, or do you use it as one of your tools?
I do. I do. Sometimes people will purchase a deck and they'll just do it on their own. Sometimes they'll just do it when they're with me. And yeah, it's really easy. We can pull cards for you if you want.
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah. Okay, let's do it. Do you have a specific question or a thought that you would like to ask the deck?
The first that comes to my mind, but of course we're in a public sphere right now, so
Mhm.
is just I have a strong sense of overwhelm at the moment.
Ah, okay. So a card related to what the overwhelm is about or how to move through it, what messages to gain from it.
That's a good question. Maybe what messages to gain from it? Like, what am I supposed to learn? You know how that there's that whole thing about, I don't know if it's like a story or a quote, and you walk up to the hole and keep walking right into it until one day you walk around it. It's
Yeah.
like, I feel like I'm stuck in the loop. I feel like this every August. I know the reasons why, but like how to not walk in the hole again.
Okay. Okay. So how to shift the narrative of the overwhelm, maybe.
And the constant regular pattern, like we are this predictable pattern and we can't think ourselves out of it.
Right. Okay. So the card that's jumping out at me for you, I'm pulling them from face down, is this one. So
Oh,
this has something to do with nurturance. This is either, I would say, about your relationship with your own children or your relationship with your inner child. So there is something about that relationship that is creating a barrier or kind of keeping you in a tailspin. So I would do a little work around that.
like go sit under a tree deep in the woods and like meditate on that kind of sentence.
Yes, or just if you do inner child work in art or in writing,
I have, it's been years.
I think it's time. I think
Okay.
this will help for this pattern. Maybe just even in visualization, just closing your eyes and asking your inner child to come forth in your mind. And you might be surprised what age inner child comes forward. And then maybe creating art about her or experiencing, asking her how, if she's feeling overwhelmed, or how this feeling of overwhelm might be affecting her or dysregulating her. You might find that there are threads with what you're feeling now that go all the way back to what she was feeling. She might have been the origin of what you're feeling now.
Well, I just had a very cool experience when you showed the card where I was like, ka-ding, or, and what you're
Good.
saying also almost made me cry. So I think you're hitting the nail on the head.
Good. Does that feel complete, or do you need another card? I can pull another one if you feel.
What about a card about just holding on to like an excited hopefulness and not letting go?
How to do that, or how to support yourself in holding on to it.
Maybe how to.
Okay. Oh, I love this image. I never know how to hold this image because it goes like this and it goes like this. So this image is, roots are branches. And so this is all about taking a new perspective and seeing things in a different way so that you can see them through a new lens. So I would say if you're trying to hold on to that joy and kind of ride the wave of excitement, start to see things in a new lens, turn your world upside down and see how it looks. You can even play with that somatically by standing on your head, or, doing somersaults, or in your art, trying to create with your non-dominant hand, or creating something kind of upside down instead of straight on, and then seeing how it comes through.
That is such a powerful, I mean, it's very fun for me as a fellow artist to think how you made these pieces before you actually made the deck, and
Yeah.
how like so well they're applying. That is so cool. And it also makes me think about how you drive the same way home and you're passing all these like cool roads or natural areas or whatever. They're just missing them. You're just driving right by them. It goes back to that habit thing. And
Yes.
especially if we add in being a parent, we've got somewhere to go. We have the overwhelm. We have the stress. We're going to the grocery store. Okay. The best use of time, quote, is to stick on that road. But to turn it upside down would be to not be in a rush and give yourself a chance to kind of wander and to float, even metaphorically. And that feels very nice to think about.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's a big part of the Radiant Life Project. It's about getting unstuck because so much of us, we're on autopilot and we're on cruise control, and life is busy and it's chaotic and it's crazy, and we're missing it because we're on autopilot. So just simply driving down a different road, or drawing with your non-dominant hand, eating using the spoon with your non-dominant hand, something different, right? Putting a tea bag in your water bottle and having a different flavor that you're drinking that day. Just change. And what that does is it actually disrupts the neurochemistry in our brains, and it activates new awareness and attention, because your very physiology is like, oh, something's different. What's going on? And then you become more attentive to your life.
Mm-hmm. How do you relate that? So we were talking about the 3 pillars.
Yes. Yeah. So
Because this clearly is connected to one of them.
they're all connected. So the 3 pillars of a radiant life are: first, authentic integrity, which is basically be who you are, not who you're supposed to be. Say yes when you mean yes, say no when you mean no, and do not self-abandon by collapsing into what other people want you to be.
That's a big one.
Authentic integrity. It's a big one. Number 2, aligned relationships. That means finding your tribe, the true people who love you as you are, people who don't want you to chase them, people who don't manipulate you, people who don't ask you to be anyone other than you actually are, and they love you for your flaws, right? Aligned relationships. And third is abundant creativity. And creativity being not just through art, but through that way of living with curiosity and open-mindedness, and cooking and gardening and walking a different path in nature and noticing things. So those are the 3 pillars.
And when you're very articulate and you're very organized. This is my impression of the moment. We don't know each other that well. So in honor of organizing your thoughts for these projects, do you sit and write? Do you take a walk? Because I'm sure when you're coming up with these 3 pillars, like how to, hash away the extras, how to get clear about it, how to communicate it to others, because there's so many fun options, and then you're writing a book on this, what do you do for yourself to kind of hone in on the real core of what you're trying to say? Because sometimes we can get so scattered with all of our ideas.
Yeah. Well, I spend a lot of time in nature. I try to go for a walk every day. And when I'm by myself in a kind of mindful experience, I try to open myself as like a channel, and I just try to allow whatever needs to come through to come through. So I do that in nature. I do that in meditation. I do have a sitting practice every day where I don't follow any particular visualization. I just see myself as a channel. I connect myself both downwardly to earth and upwardly to spirit, whatever bigger universe. And then I allow myself to receive. And sometimes things drop in. And when they drop in, they are incredibly clear. And then I tend to write about them. Sometimes I'll process the things that come through, and I'll either write about them in my journal or I'll make art about them, and then they will become more crystallized.
This is so fun to hear what you're saying, because every time I'm stuck on a painting or a project or within the small business attempts that I'm organizing, the walk is what does it. And the meditation too. To me, that ends up more of like a relaxation, nervous system calming. Something about taking a walk. I'll ask a question and take the walk, and then not try to think through it. Just kind of let it, like you're saying, be a channel, let it arrive, just relax, let it arrive. Every time I come back, I know exactly what I want to do next or what to do next.
Yes, that's the power of bilateral stimulation. So there's a whole branch of psychotherapy called EMDR, which I'm actually not trained in, but it's about rapid eye movements from left to right. And having that bilateral stimulation of left, right, whether it's your legs walking or your arms when you're swimming or watching the waves come in and out from the ocean. When we have left to right movement in a repetitive way, it opens us and it allows us to have really deep connection with ourselves and really deep processing.
So like crawling as a baby.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of like 3 people I want to connect you with that I think you would very much enjoy collaborating and sharing and getting to know each other. I'm having ideas.
I would love it.
Okay, good. I do want to, okay, so you've already mentioned you're working on a book. This is your second book, or are there more? And the first was called The Authentic Mother, Creative Art Engagement to Support the New Parent. I love hearing about mixing creativity with motherhood. Not everyone is able to be a mother or doesn't want to, and that, or isn't, or whatever. There's all these different ways to be in the world. It's interesting that you are choosing to connect those two together. Was that when you were having children yourself, or what inspired that particular project?
Yeah. So this is the book, The Authentic Mother. And I wrote this book when my son was 1 or in his first year. So it was 9 years ago. And I was looking for a supportive resource because I was having a difficult transition, stretching my life around this new baby, and the selflessness that comes with motherhood really hit me hard. So I knew that I had art as a tool that was consistent and always helpful. And so I started to kind of journal and use my own art to process through what I was feeling, everything from, the new baby to the body image stuff to things in my marriage, things with my family members, all of this. And luckily I got a book deal to push it out into the world. But it really, this book kind of was another birth for me. I birthed my son, I birthed myself as a mother, and then I birthed this book to try to help other mothers. And what's really great about the book is that if you're not a mother or a father or a parent in any way, these exercises still apply to you. So I had over 35 real women who do not identify as artists create directives for the book. So I would write the directives, and then they would choose one that felt like it fit, and they would make art. And so for example, I just opened to a random page. This is the polarity drawing. And this is about how you hold the experience of like 2 different emotional experiences at the same time. Now, this can happen in motherhood. It can also happen in childhood, in your workplace. And so this is the image that this artist made for polarity for 2 different emotions. Right.
Wow.
So all of these are applicable outside of motherhood. This one's about your body as a vessel for your soul. It's a more spiritual image. So this is helpful for parents, but it's also helpful for non-parents.
Yeah, and maybe even in a classroom or with children, and how to share and digest what you're really feeling. And it is very confusing that we are able to feel this feeling and this feeling at the same time.
Yeah. And we don't have to choose. That's the beauty of art, is that our art can hold more than one experience, and it can be just as dynamic as we can be as humans. And so I love the way that art creates sort of a tangible holding space for all the complexities of being a person in the world. And it allows you to put it outside of yourself and be able to witness it from an observer perspective, rather than that sort of introspective process when we get stuck in our own minds and we get really confused. When we make it something outside of us, then we can relate to it. And we can even dialogue with it and ask it questions. We can create follow-up artwork and response work. And so it allows an infinite depth to whatever it is we're experiencing.
Well, did you feel like I did when I had my first child? It was like being hit by a ton of bricks. Like you're saying, the list of things, there's so much change. It's an amazing level of change. It's down to every cell in your body, and like how you fit your genes change, like you're saying, the relationships change, so much changes. Of course, that is a metaphor for everything. All kinds of things to make you feel that way. You're caring for an elder parent, you're caring, all kinds of things. And that time for me, the getting hit by the ton of bricks time, it was like such a like reshuffling of myself that I kind of lost myself a little. And I also had this fear of, well, is my art gone forever? Will I ever have time for these things ever again? And this shoot too shall pass. We know this too shall pass. But in the moment, it's so intense, and you're experiencing it in the moment. So you can't sit in the moment wishing and waiting for it to be over, or not figuring things out until it's over, or, and it's just a very interesting time. And that was part of what inspired this podcast, was a little gift or a little feeling or a little moment of inspiration. Like, you're not alone. Everyone has hard times. Things happen to everybody. And you'll have this squished and squeezed feeling, and don't ever let go of your creative self. Don't ever let go of that spark, and that's what the rich life is. And we need it, and it's good for us. So that means it's good for the planet in theory. And I love how you're connecting things. I feel like you know how sometimes there's like so many different personalities that exist out in the world, and sometimes it's like you're cut from the same pie, maybe. It's very fun.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
And
Yeah.
what are some kind of fun things that have happened after you did organize your first book and put it out into the world? Are there some kind of fun connections that happened, or some things that surprised you because you know, went from beginning to end with this project?
Yeah, I think the book actually attracted a different audience than I knew was possible. It did bring in a lot of what I expected, you know, the new parents and specifically the new mothers that were like, I thought I was alone and I'm not, right? But it also I got feedback that people who did not identify as creative were being helped by the book because they were like, oh, it doesn't have to be a formal art process, or I don't have to want to frame it. Sometimes what we need to make is a mess. And that's what the book gives space for. You can create art that's ugly. You can create art that hurts, right? You can create art with finger paints that are left over from your baby's endeavor, whatever. And so I think it really opened creativity to people who had closed it off. You would not believe how many art therapy sessions I have with people where they tell me that they turned their creativity off in kindergarten or first grade because they had an art teacher who told them they were not good at art. So
Yes.
people closed the pipeline. And so a lot of those people kind of came back and they were like, oh, this is good. And I forgot. And there was actually a big audience of men who were I was really surprised that they were like, this helped me too. I have a chapter in this book. I work a lot with neuroscience and what happens in the brain and how art affects and changes the brain. And so I have a section in the book about the mommy brain and also the daddy brain. And men love the daddy brain. They love to learn about why it is that they feel the way they feel, how their brain changes from pregnancy to delivery and then beyond. And then when they're throwing a baseball back and forth, their brain is actually different than it was when they were holding their newborn. And so and there were also men who were just like, these directives help because that allowed them to touch into kind of a more introspective and thoughtful side that they didn't have access to before.
And gives them permission. Is so validating to be told it's totally fine and normal that you feel different ways, or that we have different phases, or that we don't feel like we used to feel like, because it's a little disconcerting, like what's wrong with me.
Yes.
And so that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think the book is written in a really accessible language. Even when I'm talking about science, some feedback I've gotten from people is that they feel like I'm just right there with them when they're reading, and they feel like they're talking to a friend and they're reading from a friend. And so that is a big part of how I like to show up for people is like, I'm here with you. I'm in it. I have maybe a little more tools or resources because I've studied this, but I'm with you and I'm happy to share it.
Yeah, definitely. What would you say has been one of your biggest struggles when it comes to staying on your creative path?
I think for me, trust has always been a little bit of a barrier. I tend to have that kind of thinking where if something feels a certain way in the moment, I'm like, oh my God, it's going to feel like this forever. And so for me, just to trust the process that sometimes my creativity changes and it looks differently than I recognize it. Like, for instance, right now, while I'm building and kind of moving the Radiant Life project out into the world, that is such a huge creative process that I'm not drawing right now or painting. And that feels weird because I don't want to, I don't ever want to, like you said before, I don't want to close down my creative methods. And I have to remind myself that it's like a pilot light within me that will never go out. My creativity is inherent as it is with all creatures, all beings. We were born creative. Our ancestors created on the walls of caves. We can't lose it. And so I have to keep reminding myself that sometimes creativity looks like building a business. Sometimes it looks like writing a book, and it doesn't have to adhere to certain standards or expectations to be valid.
Definitely. And that connects to what you were saying. Like if you're busy nursing your baby and you can't go in your studio, that's okay. The flame is still there, even when you're journaling instead, or that kind of thing. My mom told me, have a sketchbook, put all your ideas in that sketchbook, and one day you will then go back to that sketchbook. And that was during baby time, you know. And it
Yeah.
was helpful because you want it to keep going. You want to remind yourself, okay, it's not over. It's just, this is it right now. Like you're saying, different phases and times of creative time.
Yeah.
And it's also fun to hear about it because this year, I did a painting called Inner Flame, exactly about what you're talking about.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful.
I'll send you a little image so you can see. I'm really interested in the Sacred Heart imagery and that kind of stuff.
Beautiful. I'd love to see it.
Um, Tell us a little more about where people can find what you have to offer and kind of what you're offering now and where you are on Instagram and all of that.
Yes. So my main website is theradiantlifeproject.com. At the bottom of each page on my website, there's a place where you can sign up for my email list. And that's probably the best place to sign up to be notified when I offer retreats and workshops and programs and just updates. So I like to direct people to the newsletter first and foremost. I'm also really kind of vamping up my social media presence. I'm posting a reel of short video every day on Instagram, just kind of giving out all of the teachings and all of the inspirations that I can, everything from creativity to epigenetics and neuroscience, all the way to just, motivation and inspiration. So you can find me on Instagram at the Radiant Life Project. And I've also got a YouTube channel. It's also the Radiant Life Project. And that's where I just do longer versions of the videos, between 5 and 10 to 20 minutes, depending on what I'm talking about. Everything from brain sciences for regulating your nervous system to creativity to even stories that are from Buddhist mythology and hold wisdom. So I would say that Instagram, YouTube, and my website are probably the best places to find me these days.
Awesome. And we'll definitely include all your links in the show notes, per usual. So I have 2 more questions for you.
Yeah.
What is filling your inspiration cup these days?
Nature, for sure. These walks. And especially now as the weather's getting a little cooler, I'm not a summer baby. So being out, I get out at like 5:20 in the morning to beat the heat. And I just love noticing just which flowers are different than yesterday, or how the sunrise looks different. I just get so much inspiration from nature.
And if you do that every day, one thing I love about it too is like you're watching the season change.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Yeah.
like totally witnessing it.
Yes,
I
and I
love
feel
that.
part of something. Like I'm part of something so big that I can't even understand it, but I can be in it. And so it's very nourishing for me. And I always come home from my walks feeling inspired about something.
Uh-oh, here comes another idea.
I know, always. I'm just like constantly streaming ideas.
um, do you have any last words of encouragement for anyone and everyone out there doing the best they can to fold creativity into their daily lives?
Don't stop. Whatever it looks like, just keep doing it and, keep accessing different forms of creativity, keep letting yourself explore the world, even if all you can do is think an imaginative thought or notice a color. Just spend a moment and be creative every day and don't stop, because that pilot light won't go away, but it can grow. And when it grows, there's nothing like it. It feels amazing.
So well said. I love it. And I appreciate you being here so much. And I look forward to continuing to connect. And I look forward to hearing about people checking out what you're doing. And I'm glad you're out there doing what you're doing. That's for sure.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been a great conversation.
Until next time.